DLC galore or sequel game? Now, talking about the future plans for Rebirth of Souls is probably the most difficult thing to tackle at this moment because the game is not even out yet. We don't know how well the game is performing. We don't know how well it's going to do when it comes out. And pretty much the topic of this conversation kind of depends a lot on that. But just, I would say to a certain extent, not fully. The facts are that we do have a DLC pack coming. We're gonna have 4 characters in it, and we don't know who's gonna be in it, and I don't think we don't even know when it's gonna come out as well. Now, depending on the game's success, I think you can go either 2 ways. If it's decent, then they would probably only go with the DLC route. If it's very successful, then they would do a sequel game. There are some problems though that I find if they decide to go with the DLC route or just purely DLC and no sequel game. First of all, if that's the case, the DLC is absolutely going to cover Thousand Year Blood War characters. And we're not talking about just Stern Raiders. We're talking about the old cast, Thousand Year Blood War version of most of them. How do I feel about that? Not a huge fan of it, to be honest. I'm not a huge fan of that idea. The reason why is because generally in fighting games, I don't like when there's multiple versions of the same character. It's already something when there's 3 versions of Ichigo in this game. You know, I feel some way about it. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I understand why they have to do that. And I understand that everyone is not going to be aligned with my opinion with this, and they would want like a, you know, separate version for each. Shikai Ichigo, Bankai Ichigo, and then, you know, Dangai Ichigo. That is very likely eventually going to be in the game anyway. So, you know what, with Ichigo, alright, fine, he's the exception, whatever you want to call it. But the moment it becomes almost every character, it's way too redundant. It's way too redundant. Think about it like this too. If you have the DLC versions of those characters, right? The Thousand Year Blood War and this and that, who's gonna play the original version anymore? Like, I'm sorry, but Thousand Year Blood War Renji is 100 times more badass than the original Renji in every way possible. Same for Rukia, you know? Like, this Rukia looks cool, but are you kidding me? If it was Thousand Year Blood War Rukia, honestly, I would even consider like secondary, making her like my secondary or something like that. That's one of my favorite versions of Rukia. Thousand Year Blood War Rukia with like temperature control. Are you kidding me? Oh man, that's one of the big problems that I have with having just DLC. If it was a sequel game, I expect them to sort of start from scratch, and all the characters from this game, they would not bring them back for the sequel game. Now, what do I mean by that? Ichigo, let's say the sequel game comes out. It's gonna be mostly Thousand Year Blood War. That's what the sequel game is gonna be about. Let's hope it's gonna be also covering the Lost Agent arc, which they should. Ichigo is probably gonna have 2 forms at best. 2 forms, which is, I think I like that a lot more, to be honest. And you know, 1 version of Rukia, 1 version of Renji, 1 version of like almost every character, that is way more acceptable to me. The few pros of them taking the DLC route fully is, obviously DLC is going to take less long to do compared to a sequel game, which only it would be adapted when Core 4 is finished. That's quite some time, you know, for a sequel game to come out. Core 4 needs to be done, which is probably going to be like end of next year. So only then development will begin. So imagine, that's kind of a long time, you know. But I mean, I'm okay waiting, to be honest, because Rebirth of Souls, I'm assuming it's gonna be played for a while. Let's hope that's the case. I'm okay and willing to wait as long as the quality matches what we expect. I guess the other thing about also the DLC route is you can pick and choose which one to buy, right? I'm assuming, like separate characters. They only mentioned expansion. I wonder if you can actually buy those characters individually. I don't know yet. Think about a sequel game too is the biggest one actually to me is the budget will be bigger for sure. Any complaints that anyone has about the lack of certain things in the original Rebirth of Souls of like quality, you could say, you know, if it's like visuals, you know, we've seen the story mode, we've seen like some of the, you know, pixelated shadows and this and that. In the sequel game, I'm 100% sure it would not be the case, or it would be much better, graphically speaking. And hey, even the quality for the mechanics, I'm sure too, which I think my assumption is even the OG Rebirth of Souls would be decent mechanically speaking, but the sequel would go even deeper and better. Pause. Also, it'd be cool too. Imagine Thousand and Bloodborne being adapted as a story. If they just go with the sequel route, and I don't think they're gonna adapt anything story-wise from, I mean, maybe they might, like from, you know, season 2 or season 3, they'd be like, hey guys, let's we're gonna put the Lost Agent arc as part of the DLC story. That's also a possibility, but again, I think it would be better if they do a sequel, because I mean, Thousand and Bloodborne, that's so much material to cover. That is so much material to cover that it pretty much warrants its own game at that point. And think about it too. If there's a sequel game, imagine the DLC in that game. Because it's definitely not going to be like Stern Raiders or anything like that. This is probably what would happen in the sequel game. That's my assumption. I'm thinking it's going to be like, you know, the Soul Reaper roster, the Stern Raider roster, the Iran cards, the ones that are from the previous game are gonna get, like, you know, ported over from this and with better visuals and whatnot and balance. And DLC might be stuff from Can't Fear Your Own World. Imagine. That would be so cool. Basically, it would give more potential for what they could do for DLC. I would love a sequel game, honestly. I would love them to take the sequel game route. I hope it's literally expansion pass 4 characters. Stop it right there. Hey, listen, we're working on a sequel game. Let's put all our money on that. Will that happen? No idea. Honestly, I don't know. Bandai does some weird stuff sometimes, so it's honestly hard to tell. But my hopes is sequel game, please. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Have a good one.